Hey everyone, this is Matt from the Imagineer podcast, and I just wanted to give you a few quick thoughts on Flight of Passage over at Disney's Animal Kingdom, and in particular, thoughts on motion sickness and how to avoid motion sickness on this ride, because I just rode it for the first time last week, and for the first few months, I was scouring the internet trying to figure out, is this a ride that's going to make me feel motion sick or not? And if so, how can I avoid motion sickness and be able to experience this amazing attraction? Just to give you a little bit of background about the type of motion sickness that affects me, I'm someone who can ride most roller coasters until they get really too intense. I can handle Rock and Roller Coaster, I can handle Space Mountain, I can do them, maybe a couple times in a row, but not too much more than that. But when it comes to motion simulators, I really cannot handle those types of rides. I cannot do Star Tours, I really cannot do Mission Space, and even sometimes Soarin' can make me dizzy. Although I do come off okay, I usually find out that at the end of the ride I'm feeling a little bit queasy. And so I was really worried about riding Flight of Passage, knowing what I knew about this ride. But let me tell you that for those of you who have mild motion sickness, this is something that I really feel like you can do. And again, it's something that I was worried about, but at the end of the day, I really did come off of this ride feeling perfectly fine. And like I said, Soarin' could sometimes make me feel dizzy, and that's really calm. Whereas Flight of Passage, because of how realistic it is, I came off of this ride feeling perfectly fine. No dizziness whatsoever. There were a couple of moments during the ride where I did feel maybe a little bit off for a second or two, but the way the Imagineers designed this ride, I have to give them complete credit. It is smooth, and I've heard people compare it somewhere between Soarin' and Star Tours. It really is a lot closer to Soarin', but don't get me wrong, there is a lot more motion involved than Soarin'. That being said, the center of motion on Flight of Passage really is your own vehicle, and I found that helped a lot. The other thing, like I said, that helped was the fact that you really are completely immersed into this experience. The ride vehicles, which many of you may have read, are synced up perfectly the way they move with the all the sights that you see on the attraction, and it really does provide you with a very realistic experience. So here are a couple of tips in case you are worried about motion sickness with this ride that I found to be really helpful when I was riding this. And again, I'm someone who does typically feel sick after motion simulators, but I felt no motion sickness from Flight of Passage. The first thing is to stay immersed. There were a couple of times where I was feeling a little confident in myself, and so I was looking around to see what else was going on in the room. That made me feel off. There's one moment where I closed my eyes. That made me feel off, but all the times I was staying immersed in the ride, I felt perfectly fine. The second thing is that the Imagineers designed a little trick within the attraction, which I thought was really cool, that I learned from a cast member, which is to stare at the Navi guide in front of you if you ever do feel motion sick. And I did try this on a couple of times where, again, there were a couple parts of the ride where I felt like I was a little bit off. But staring at that Navi guide, I guess because it's perfectly centered in the middle of the motion and the range of motion, it really helps to balance you if you are starting to feel a little bit off. So if you are feeling off at any point, stare at your Navi guide in front of you, and it'll really help you stay balanced. And the third thing is to know your limitations and the things that do help you to avoid motion sickness. So if you're someone who is incredibly prone to motion sickness, yeah, chances are you're probably going to feel sick on this ride. But if you're someone who's somewhere in the middle, then this is something I feel that you really can handle and is really worth the experience, especially once. And you can do, I know, a wide range of things that you can do to try to avoid motion sickness, whether that's, one thing that works for me is chewing mint gum. I know some people use essential peppermint oils, other people take Dramamine or Bonine or use Sea-Bands. Whatever it is that helps you to avoid motion sickness, I would definitely encourage you to do so. But again, the most important thing is to stay immersed, have fun, really enjoy this ride. I think it is completely worth it. And again, if you're someone who's somewhere in the middle when it comes to motion sickness, I do think it's worth a shot, even if you do get motion sickness from IMAX screens. It is so realistic, so amazing. I really want to do it again. I came off this ride with no problems and would totally want to do this ride again. If you want to learn some more tips, if you want to stay connected with the Imagineer podcast, be sure to like us at facebook.com/Imagineer podcast. And again, ride Flight of Passage. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you're someone who does suffer from motion sickness, and let the other folks know watching this video if you think this is something that they can handle or not. Thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day.